Welcome to Light in the Shadow. I'm Dana Kenyon, and it's my aim to encourage, support, and equip women to live life under the shadow of God's wing. On this channel, I'll be bringing you videos of women who are doing just that. I hope their stories will help you find your path in His kingdom. Under His shadow is where we can walk in His protection, receive His provision, and rest in His care. Together, we will be light under the shadow of His wing. Welcome back to the program. Today on our program, I have Ann Siebert, my friend, with us, and she is married to Pastor Jason Siebert. They are together parenting 7 children on a little bit of acreage in rural Wyoming. If you can imagine rural Wyoming, kind of a duplication in terms. But they have some acreage and some cows, and I don't know what all critters you've got out there. What do you got? What do you got?
Well, I'm looking at my arm and I'm saying I've got enough of a farmer tan right now. We have, right? We have mostly just beef cattle, and I got my first dairy cow this last winter, a couple dogs, quite a few chickens, and then kids, feral children running around. So we are just raising kids and cows. How's that?
Feral Siebert children.
Right. Yes.
Ann and I first met at a women's retreat for our denominations district, where we were both on the planning team. And since then have been to several more together. And the more that I get to see Ann in action, the more I love her. And I love her story. So I think that you're going to enjoy the program today. And welcome, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you. So you mentioned we do have 7 kids.
Yes.
And I think I even did that this week. I look at my husband and go, we have 7 children. What are we doing? How are we doing this on a daily basis? And he looks at me and he smiles and said, yes, we have 7 children. I'm like, you're fine. I'm not fine.
We've been doing it for a while now, honey.
Right. Newsflash, honey. You didn't wake up yesterday and find another one. Yeah.
It's a journey and it's a joy. And I get to follow you also on Facebook. So I get to see some of the escapades that go on.
Yes.
And it looks a little bit busy to me. And when you were talking to me earlier, you did say, well, this is just our life. And so it doesn't, seem out of the norm necessarily to you. It's just how life is. So right. You've also said that it takes a village to raise the Sieberts. How does that work?
Some days it works really, really well. And some days we go to bed and say this didn't work at all. But we don't live close to our family. Our closest family grandparents are in the Black Hills, which is about 4.5 hours away from us. And so since we have lived out in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which this will be about 15 years, we've kind of chosen our own family, our own church family, our clan, our whatever you want to call it. And we call it our village because who was it? Was it Clinton that coined that phrase of it takes a village to raise a child? And it takes a village to raise us as Sieberts because it's not just our children. It's teaching us as parents how to raise our children as well. And knowing that there are those people that are beside us, whether it's the principal or it's, someone from church or it's a teacher, you name it, we need it and we need the help.
Yes. You called yourself a bio foster adoptive family.
Right.
That's an interesting way to put it. Very accurate. And it does tell a lot about what you kind of have to deal with on a daily basis.
Exactly. Do you want me to describe kind of what that all means for us, bio, foster, and adoptive?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have 2 children that are our biological children, and they are currently 19 and almost 17. And our 19-year-old just finished his first year of college at Northwestern in Orange City, Iowa. So we are now wearing and sporting a lot of red that we didn't before. It's great. And then, like I said, our oldest daughter is almost 17, and she'll be a senior next year in Burns. And then we are, I say the bio adoptive and foster family because we are a foster family and we have adopted via foster care. So 4 of our children are officially adopted and are Sieberts. And then we have 1 more child who is currently our daughter via foster care.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's a mouthful. It's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. And
Yes, it is.
you talked about part of your clan or your tribe or whatever you want to call it being
Right.
the principal at your elementary school.
Yes.
What a
Yes.
what a wonderful person to come alongside you and
I know.
partner with you.
I tell him he can't retire until our youngest is, who's going to be in 2nd grade, until our youngest finishes 6th grade. And he hasn't answered me yet, but he won't tell me. But yeah, he absolutely is part of our tribe, whether he likes it or not, or wants to be or not. But we have different rules that we call, our principal's last name is Mr. Burkett, or his name is Burkett. And so we have the Burkett rule, and we have Burkett's boot camp that we know if our kids get in trouble, they might be doing wall sits or they might be doing sit-ups just to get some of that energy out. But yeah, even the principal is part of our tribe because we get regular phone calls from him because of some of our children's personalities. They might warrant a few more phone calls, but it's just truly from the principal at the top to the teacher to the para to whoever, it's the custodian, it's every single inch of adults and people that touch our family and our kids' lives. They have to become part of our village because
Yes.
they all need to be able to speak into our kids' lives as appropriate.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, well,
Mhm.
you're fortunate to have that kind of input. So today we're going to look at how you kind of got started in all
Yeah.
of this. We're going to start back at the beginning and talk about how you were raised compared to how Jason was raised and how that's affected
Yeah.
the way you move forward. So
Yep.
tell us about how you were raised.
All right. So you asked about kind of how did we get to 7 children essentially, and starts out even before me. My brother and I are both adopted. My parents chose adoption. My brother was brought home at about 3 months, and I was brought home at 2 months. And when that happened, it's always interesting with adoption because everybody has their birth story, right? And I think we neglect to remember that there's an adoption story, an excitement, something that is really special about that moment when you met your future child, whether you realized it was via adoption or not. But like I said, my brother's adopted, and he is 3.5 years older than I am. And when my mom got the call about me, she got off the phone, and when my brother woke up, she said, he was at the top of the steps, and she said, "Guess what? You're going to get a new sister." And he immediately said, "Oh, she can have my bed." And so that it was sweet. And that idea of this is just normal, and adoption is something to be celebrated. It's amazing. And my dad, back in the day, this is back in the day of cassette tapes in the late 70s, early 80s. And my dad he's on the cassette tape and he's asking my brother, "What did we get last month?" It could have been a toy, it could have been something else. And it was my brother saying, "I got a new sister." And so that excitement of, I got a new sister, not just a new trike or something else, but that idea that adoption is normal and it's celebrated, and it's something that we need to really talk about and make normal. And even with my own kids now, we are all different backgrounds, skin tones, everything. And obviously people look at our family and go, "Which one are you? Which one is the adopted one here?" But that's such a celebration of, this is who we are, and we're not going to hide it. We're not going to keep it from our kids, anything like that. So it's really neat. And then my husband, he is a twin. He will tell you, he is the older twin. And his mom died just after childbirth, or his biological mom she'd passed away after childbirth. And my father-in-law then got remarried when the twins were just less than 2 years old. So here's Jason's mom marrying, and I say Jason's mom because she raised him. And they become an instant family
Yes.
of toddler boys, twins. And she would always say, if the twins were quiet, I knew they were playing, which what a blessing when you look back, right? But married, had twins, and then they went on to have 2 more children. So my husband has a younger sister who lives in Texas and a younger brother who now lives in Minnesota, and his twin also lives in Minnesota. But when I was dating Jason, I entered into this really loud, chaotic type of environment, and I loved it. And now all of his siblings are believers, and his dad's a pastor, his brother's a pastor, another brother is in ministry in a Christian college, higher education. So they're all a whole bunch of loud pastors, I'll just say. But it was loud, it was boisterous, it was kind of that chaos. And I thought, this is what I want.
Yeah.
Because I
told me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you told me about your background being very quiet. So tell us about what your house felt like as opposed to his.
Perfect. Yeah. So like I said, I have just one brother, and he's 3.5 years older, and it was a very quiet household. We watched TV. My parents were both teachers. They were tired at the end of the day, and things are very orderly. And trust me, there are days I still wish that I could have order in my life and I wouldn't be raising feral children, right? But it was very orderly. So I started dating the pastor's kid who had gone through some rebellious years and had kind of gone off the deep end and was coming back to Jesus at that time. And he would have, and did, he would tell his parents, I don't want to have any kids. This is not going to be me. I see you smiling, Dana, and it is hilarious because now we have 7 children, and there is no, it's quiet. I was gonna say there is no quiet. It's quiet while they're all asleep. But I think just that pondering that here's a man who I think didn't want kids because he put his parents through a lot as a teenager, and yet now has 7 and is raising difficult children. They're not easy kids because of their past behaviors, their past issues, and some of the trauma that they were exposed to. So I just love, in some ways, I love that story that we come from very different backgrounds, and yet we've created something new and loud and boisterous. And like I said, I look at my husband and think, oh, we're really parenting 7 children.
How did this happen? So I remember you telling me a story about your dad and you watching a show, I don't know if it was a documentary or whatever, it was exposing the Russian adoption or orphanages, I guess. Tell us about that memory.
I can tell you exactly where I was sitting. I can tell you where my dad was sitting, and it was probably 60 Minutes. I'm not even sure if it's still on, but back then when I was a kid, it was on Sunday evenings, and in the late afternoon, probably before the main Disney show came on Sunday nights. But my dad and I were watching, and it must have been probably around the fall of communism, 89, 90, somewhere in there. And they were doing an expose on Russian orphanages, and we all kind of know the atrocities that happened in orphanage, right? And some of those are still happening today, I think. But I remember watching that expose, that documentary, and thinking, why are we not doing this as a family? You've already adopted, we have the space. Dad, why aren't we doing this? And he I don't remember what his answer was, but the thing and the takeaway that I have is that memory was stuck in my head, and now I have the opportunity to be living out that dream that I apparently wanted my father to do, and my parents to do. But it was really my responsibility to do that. So we don't have any international adoptions, but that idea of adoption is just interwoven into who I am, I think, and the understanding of what I needed to do.
Yeah. You talked about making sure that you keep the biological parents of these foster children involved in their lives as long as they can. Tell us why that's an important aspect to your family.
Right. So the need to have biological family involved, or at least be talking about it, be discussing it, making it part of them, is because it is part of our children. I have a bio parent, and I have met her, and even though for me it's a very small portion, because of my being adopted as an infant, it is a much bigger reality to my children's lives. And so to deny that biological parent piece, to deny those memories, whether good or bad, it's in my opinion not a good idea. It isn't always possible or healthy for our children to be engaged with the biological family or that kind of thing. Some of our kids are not. Some of our kids do have a biological grandpa that they can talk to. I have a Father's Day card sitting on our table that is for the boys to go ahead and sign and give to their biological grandpa, because it is important. It is just it's a natural part of who they are. It's a natural consequence of having an adopted child.
Yes, yeah. Another piece of the puzzle that really, if it's at all possible, needs to be worked through as well.
Exactly. And it's something that needs to be discussed and openly discussed, I think, as our kids age. And it needs to be that age appropriate of why or why not can I see my biological family? What are the implications of it? And then at some point, we know that our children will search that out or could potentially look into something like that. And that's just the nature of adoption.
Right, right. Okay, so let's look at the start of your family. So you and Jason get married, and you parented two biological children, Lincoln and Mayana. And but that wasn't the end. I mean, you at least had always had in mind a bigger family. And you always did, since you watched that documentary, had that adoption piece in there as well. So what did the process look like when you had the two bio children and then you decided to pursue adoption? How did that first pan out?
I think you could say it panned out and you could say it didn't pan out. We had pursued looking at adoption through a secular agency in Wyoming. And as we began the process, as we began the interview process, they had decided that because of our Christian beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever you want to call it, that we would not be a good fit to represent their agency, we didn't fit the board of directors' vision for adoptive parents. And so we were denied, which was at first, it really kind of leaves you questioning, are we doing everything wrong or right with our own biological children? Are we doing something wrong raising them the way we are? And then it came to that realization that no, we're not. And having grown up in adoptive family, adoption was the norm. People would ask me, what's it like to be adopted? And I think, I don't know, what's it like to look at your own parent and you look like them? I wanted to say jokingly sometimes, how unfortunate that you have to look at your bio parent and you know what you're going to look like. I always had the beauty of denial of who knows what I'm going to look like. I might stay young forever.
It's a big question mark.
Right. Sometimes question marks are okay. So I had always thought adoption would be in the mix. And again, having my own idea that, hey, let's have more kids. I am not a good mother to infants. They wake me up at night. And my oldest had an ear infection every time he cut a tooth. And you don't keep me up after midnight or I crash and burn. And so we knew we didn't need to do the baby route again. And yet we knew adoption was on the horizon. We knew that there were kids that were waiting to be adopted. And that's, I think, what some of the hurt initially came from with the one agency of, I don't even need an infant. I want the ones that have had the trauma. And now you're saying I'm not okay for that. But I digressed a little bit in that. And so I think we knew we didn't need to bring any more of our own feral children into this world. Let's go another route. So we did eventually pursue foster care. And it might sound like we really went into foster care simply to adopt, and that wasn't the case. But when you are going through that foster care licensure and foster care process, they will ask you, are you open to adoption? Or do you want short-term? Do you want long-term? What are you, kind of what are the dynamics that you are able to handle and willing to handle within the foster care realm, if that makes sense. You know, if you're not ever going to adopt, then they purposely will put short-term placements with you, knowing that this is not an option. Or if they know that there are families that are looking to potentially adopt through foster care, then they can kind of work around and work with those children as they come into placement, if that makes sense. So we were very much open to that adoption piece and had said yes. And so that's how we got into not only the foster care piece, but then that eventual adoption piece as well.
Yes, well, I'm glad that you continued to pursue children through foster care, because looking at your lives now, it's just evident that you are very good at what you do. You do parent well. You have a unique style. It's just been fun to kind of watch that and see how that pans out. But before you, as you were getting into this process, that's when Jason actually wanted you to check in on your biological mom. What was his thinking? What was his reason for that?
I was very much against, or feeling that I didn't need to pursue looking up and looking into information about my biological mom. My brother had done it. It wasn't an important thing to me. And don't get me wrong when I say it wasn't or isn't, because it is, and it's a person. There's a person on the other end of this relationship, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
But I had my parents. They were my mom and dad. I felt very complete. I didn't feel like I was missing that piece by not pursuing. And I remember my husband saying, because remember, his biological mom had passed away just after childbirth.
Right.
And he said to me, if I could have one afternoon with my bio mom, I'd take it.
Oh.
I understand, but I would encourage you to take that one afternoon, that one opportunity, or whatever it is, to pursue that potential relationship or explore it.
Yeah.
So I did.
Yes.
And that is an interesting story in itself. Can I go ahead and tell that?
Yeah.
Okay. So after we had decided that I would look into this, and the other impetus for looking for my biological mom was knowing we have foster children that we may adopt someday. And obviously this is prior then to us doing foster care or adoption, that this might be a relationship that could be tenuous, that could be emotional, that could be psychological as we look at this, and wanting to honor our own adopted children. We wanted to give them the space and the awareness that they could search, because I had also searched. So that's how we pursued that, and really looked at that idea of me in particular searching for a birth mom.
Yeah.
So after Jason and I had our conversation about me connecting with my bio mom, I went ahead and pursued that, thinking I've got 6 months. I can initially pursue it, say I'm doing it, and then I still have 6 months to just let it all ride out, right? That's classic. It's what's going to happen. And what I did was I reached out to the county in Minnesota that I was adopted out of, not where I was adopted into, but where I was adopted out of. And if I remember right, I left a message and then called back maybe a week later or something like that. And the woman that I talked to said basically that her mentor at the county had been the one to perform and complete my adoption paperwork, and that it really shouldn't be a big deal, and go ahead and get yourself ready and write that letter. I thought, wait a minute, what happened to 6 months? It was a week or two. So at that time, what do you say? What do you write? How do you communicate to this person out there who has chosen adoption, has chosen the trajectory essentially of your life? And what do you say to someone like that? So I wrote a 2-page letter just kind of describing my life up until then, and that amazing gift that she gave me, and the complete unselfishness really of what she did. So I got the letter ready, sent it off to the county again that I was adopted out of, and that county worker at that time had made the phone call to my bio mom and then pulled her into the office. And what it might not really mean anything significant, but what was significant to me was this person, her own mentor who trained her into social work, was also the one that performed this. And so in some ways, what an amazing opportunity that I'm sure a lot of social workers in county work don't get the opportunity to do and to be a witness of, but I'm hoping that we were able to bless her.
Yes.
So
and
she
see
called in
that
my
come
bio
around.
mom. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying she could kind of see that come around full circle.
Exactly. What
So
an
that was
amazing,
pretty
yeah,
cool.
what an amazing thing.
One thing that you didn't talk about was the fact that your birth mom, your bio mom, actually chose your parents.
Right? And you know those times when you just are annoyed at your brother and you think, why do I have a brother? That was one of the reasons why she chose my parents. Number one, a teacher, when she had been pregnant at the time with me, had been very influential in her life. She was kind of that wild child, as she will tell me. And as the wild child, she was influenced deeply by this teacher. My parents are both teachers, or were both teachers, and I had a brother. So she got to pick, you know, the family that I would be raised by, and chosen to live in a rural area in Minnesota. So a lot of those choices, I think, initially not really spoken out loud to me, but became a very important part of my life, of my thinking, of number one, my parents adopting me, and that's a choice, right, to love. The bio mom making that choice to choose adoption, and number one, to choose someone else to raise your child. It's incredible, right? There aren't even words. And then, as she later on told me, she raised a stepson, and then had one of her own children as well. So somewhere out there, I've got other siblings, if you will, but again, no real connection with them. I don't know if we ever will. But she told her stepson, this is a choice you can make. You can choose who you wish to parent you, because I believe, as I understand, that he was kind of rejected or not really raised by mom, and so she raised him as her own.
Oh.
And I think of some people will say, oh, how can you love a child, or how can you love someone that's not from you? Well, frankly, I'm not married to my brother. I'm married to my husband, and we are not genetically connected, and I love him deeply. And I don't think we often associate that kind of love, but you don't have to have a genetic child in order to love them. It's a choice. And there are days when you want to give away any child you have. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the only parent who's ever thought that, but it's that love is a true choice, and choosing your family. And again, that thought kind of goes back to then of who in the Siebert village is going to help raise us and train us and love us and surround us in our ministry, in our family, and in generations to come.
Yeah. So you get to the point where you're writing the letter and you have no idea what you're going to write to her. Tell us about the letter.
I wrote about, just kind of my upbringing, where I was raised, what kind of, I don't even remember everything, kind of what kind of a student I was. I was an exchange student in high school, and then again in college. So given those opportunities that who knows if I would have had. And then the choice of who I ended up marrying and who I've become and where I have moved, and if we even ponder those types of things as people who, if you would have been adopted, where could you have been? Where would you have been raised? What environment would you have been raised in? And also, if I remember correctly, I remember describing a little bit of God's hand was in every single step. Had I not been adopted, I wouldn't have been raised in this family.
Yes.
I wouldn't have had these opportunities. I wouldn't have come to Christ maybe in this way. And I wouldn't have met my husband. So just all of those people and places and things and events are all God ordained. It's just a matter if we see them or not.
Yeah.
And then all of those moments, and how do they all kind of react and interact into what I've become today, of now raising 7 children who are feral.
Yeah. You wrote the letter. She apparently got the letter. And her response was what?
Yeah. So she got pulled into the county social work area, whatever. And they gave her the letter and she cried. And I think it was that full circle piece that her choice was the right choice, and how
Yeah.
she had blessed me. And she had said later on, we had met, I don't think it was the first time we met, but some other time, of leaving that choice of, as part of choosing adoption, she wanted that choice then for me to come back and be able to pursue relationship if I wanted it, instead of me, or excuse me, her pursuing me, and if I had wanted that or not. And so I think she was truly glad. And we've continued to have interactions over the last few years. I've actually got 2 letters that have been returned to me because I can't figure out what's wrong and why they won't get sent to her. But usually I send at least once or twice a year, Mother's Day card or Christmas card, or a big long update, because usually we've expanded our family again. Right, we can't help that. But sending a letter of just what's been going on, and this is what our life is right now. And one time, even when we were expanding our home and we were doing some remodeling, and I must have mentioned the letter, and so she and her mother had sent some money and said, go buy a bucket of nails for your project. And so those little things are huge, to say, I'm okay with where we're at with relationship, but I want to stay engaged and I want to stay in contact.
Yeah.
And that's a really important thing. And even my parents, the first time I met, I think they handed me a letter or a card, and it was a thank you card, because they not only got to raise my bio mom's daughter, but she changed their lives.
Yeah.
And she made them the family that they are today. And there is some of that ongoing, not relationship directly to each other, but if the few times I have met her, if they know that I'm going to meet with her, it's tell her thank you and greet her on our behalf, because they understand the depth of it. And there's not, like I said, there's not an ongoing personal relationship, but there's that personal awareness and gratefulness for the choices that she made. It's amazing.
That is beautiful. Yes, it is amazing, and it's beautiful. It wasn't even a close relationship that you have with her right now, and that's not necessarily even important. The fact is that she knows that she made that right decision by you. What joy that must bring to her heart to know that about you, and that you're doing so well. And even to have the thank yous from your parents, such an affirmation. Adoption is a beautiful thing. It truly is. Okay, so let's talk about, well, no, I wanted to actually use a word a while back when we were talking. You talked about passing on to your mom the knowledge that you are continuing the legacy of adoption. And I thought that was beautiful. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so let's back up to your story now. You got the bio children, and then you had your first placement. And who was that?
Yes, we did have our first placement, and I was just talking with a friend last night. She and I had gone through the foster care certification, licensure, all of that kind of stuff together, and we were joking about some of those early days when we literally both got our first placements a couple days apart.
Oh wow!
And I don't even know how to put it, but well, I think we all understand when we're first embarking on some journey, it's special. It's kind of this fantasy of lack of true and complete awareness of what reality will be like. But licensed in 2012 and 2013, then you're anxiously waiting and thinking, when are we going to get a first placement? And I distinctly remember it was Easter Sunday evening. Everybody was in bed. My husband was working a very early shift. And so he was asleep, and I was getting kitchen counters cleaned up. And I thought, oh, okay, all is right with the world, right? I have everything in place. The kitchen's clean. My kids are in bed. We're good. And then I get a phone call for an emergency placement of 2 little kids. And Sunny, who was about 21 months at the time, and her brother Jeff, who was just over 3, joined us. And if you pick up on some themes in my life, one is, let's have everything in its place. And I really don't have everything in its place, but I wish, right? So kitchen cleaned up, everything organized, right? We're all locked in and loaded and ready to go. And then the other theme I think you will pick up, especially about our placements, is every single one of our placements have been an emergency placement.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times you can be on a list, at least in our county, to be on an emergency placement situation. Sometimes you will have a case where a child is not maybe a good fit in one place, but they can go to a different foster home that might be a better fit. And so that's kind of what's happened with all of our placements. They have been emergency placements. So Sunny and Jeff are placed with us, and we began this wild ride of, again, kind of raising toddlers, thrown completely off base again. And it's not even like our bio kids were that old. They were second and fourth grade, but
Yeah.
you forget, right? I think everybody, whether it's an adoptive or a bio or a foster placement, you kind of forget that, oh yeah, I got to change diapers thing. So as the kids are placed with us, it rocked our world. And not only did our world get rocked, it really shows up in the craziest of places. I have joked with parent after parent, whether they're bio or they're foster or adoptive, I've said, look, I've gained weight with every single child. and I gain weight with pregnancies, and I gain weight with foster care placements. And in particular with Sunny and Jeff being our first one, the things that my body went through, I had kind of I can't think of the word. I had kind of inflammation in my joints, and there was times that I changed a diaper, and boy, did we get potty trained fast, but changed a diaper and I couldn't even get off the ground. I had to kind of crawl and get up off of a chair. And I broke out in acne, which I thought, good grief, this is ridiculous. I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't be breaking out in acne. But this is the way, stress handles and shows itself in a person. And so you're going through those normal things, if you will, of parenting, and then you're going through the roller coaster of foster care, whether it's the visits with the parents or how do you integrate new children into your life. And I specifically remember Jeff he was 3.5, and he refused to walk 5 feet and hang up his coat. And it was a battle of the wills. And obviously we as parents know that you can't always give in. Most of the time you can't give into the battle of the wills. And it was a 45-minute screaming match, including 10 feet going the opposite direction to hand a coat to my husband instead of doing the 5 feet closer to hang up a coat on a hook. So those are some of the things that really rock your world, and you have to work through as a person, as a mom. You have to work through those things as a couple. You have to work through those as the entire family package, because not only are you adjusting to having new kids in the home, but now as a parent, one of you is sitting outside the door of the new kids' room of go to bed. And there's, we've had a lot of times where it takes months, but the child or children will scream for 2 hours because they don't want to go to bed, or it's scary, or they have other memories, or they've never slept in a bed maybe, or something like that. And so you are adjusting to one parent being solely focused on kids at bedtime. And in our case, our biological children, we're used to having us around that bedtime. It's time to wind down. It's time to have the last discussions. It's time to brush the teeth and have the snack and head to bed and be on those routines. And then suddenly with an emergency placement, everything is completely out the door, and you're eating chicken nuggets because that's all you can manage that day. So there were a lot of changes that happened within our home of, again, like I said, how do you work through those things as a couple? How do you work through things with your other existing children in the home? And I know that was hard for our kids. It was a huge stretch and a huge change for them that they really struggled with, feeling like they're losing a parent. And it didn't just end with Sunny and Jeff. They hit that big learning curve. And then every time since then, we've gotten places, there's still a learning curve for all the kids that are in our home of how do I adjust to this new person?
Sure. Yeah.
Thrown in, and we have to reorganize and reaccommodate our lives to fit another family member.
Yeah. Another family member that you know little about. And but you talked about all of your children kind of talking about their experiences, their life experiences, and the experiences that your own family have gone through. And you've been through this process now a bunch of times. Sometimes you even said that you would hear them talking amongst themselves. So what were those conversations like?
Those conversations are sometimes really, really funny. Sometimes there is a lot of anger in those kids. Sometimes there is a lot of sorrow, and all of that comes out because there is a completely different level of understanding and empathy that I will never experience. I can say that I have experienced different feelings simply because of being adopted, but I don't know the experiences of having lived through the pain and the heartache and all of those things, and with our kids having those memories. So um, the blessing and the curse is, the blessing is they have someone else who understands. The curse is that they have someone else who understands, and you don't ever want to have your kids, and sometimes to hear those realities that I have kids that are now mine, that have past hurt, and I can't fix it. But it goes back to that village idea.
Yeah.
I can't fix everything. We as parents want to, right? I can't fix it, but a daughter can listen and share a poem that she wrote about somebody else and bring it home to her siblings, and they have a different depth of understanding.
Wow.
They will go to maybe they'll go to another sibling and complain about something we as parents did, which all kids probably do with their parents,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
But you just sometimes hearing well, my mom did this, or my dad did this to me, or this happened, it is heartbreaking, but it gives them that unity. It gives them that what they need, I think, as siblings. And I know, like I said, they have the complaining moments and some of those, and then there's also some really funny moments that I don't think maybe other families that have not experienced high trauma or different things maybe have. Can I tell you a really funny story that
Yes.
I think maybe, frankly, Dana, you should label this "My Mom's a Pothead" as the title of your video chat with me. But one day in the last couple of months, my 7-year-old comes like bounding through the kitchen, and he's singing, "My mom's a pothead, my mom's a pothead." And another kid is in another room, like changing their laundry or something, and I bust a gut because I'm thinking, that's hilarious. And how many people would look at me and maybe go, "Wait a minute, you're the pothead?" And yet then I hear from my other older child, "Oops, maybe we shouldn't have talked about that." And yet that's, it's just a reality of our family has a lot of different trauma, and our family has a lot of different jokes and maybe a darker humor, and because we have to address things that way. We have to be open about those things. And I don't even know if this parent was a pothead, but it had come up in a conversation, and so this one kid was going with it, and it's funny because I'm not a pothead, and although I have been asked if I was a pothead because of my girl boss. But it's just, you have to just take those things in stride and go, yeah, this is our family. We're joking about these things, and
Yes.
this is a reality.
I think on one level, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. That kind of saying, that if you don't keep some humor involved in it, it will become so heavy that you won't be able to handle it. So, okay, so we have heard now about Lincoln and Mayana and Jeff and Sunny. Who's next?
Well, the next ones that we received, and as I mentioned before, one of the themes is we get emergency placements. And so we had another emergency placement on a Sunday night, and we had 2 boys, and I'll just call them P and Q, and they stayed with us for about 1.5 years. And it wasn't the magical perfect fit, but they taught me a lot. And now I look and go, wow, what was I thinking? Could I have handled this better? Obviously, yes. But I was working at our local community college at the time that I had them, and it was coming time to the parents having their rights removed. And so they were starting at our agency, county agency, they were starting the work of finding out who or how do we approach adoption. and they had a very engaged biological grandparents that would come up. They were amazing. They would come up from Denver, come up and attend the boys' basketball and football games, and they were in elementary when they were with us at the time, and they joined us for a football potluck, and she brought a dessert, and it was those moments of, this is where foster care is beautiful, because we could continue that relationship with the biological grandparents who were going through a struggle of their own at the time, and yet they were very healthy. And at the time she was saying, oh, I wish we could do this. I wish we could adopt. And I thought, no, it's okay. You can be grandpa and grandma. So they were grandpa and grandma, and they would come up, and then it was becoming time of, what do we do? Do you know anybody? And like I said, I was working at our community college, and I randomly was knocking on doors to talk to someone else in the nursing department. And I knock on a door, and of course we're talking about foster care adoption before too long. And this gal had been wanting to adopt for years. And you know me, I'm like, oh, well, let's talk. And so I said, why, or what are you wanting to adopt for? If that makes sense. Because some of us want to adopt because we need to adopt infants to have that bond, that closeness, that adoption, or that infant piece, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then there are those that are like, no, I don't know. I want to have children, and I'm fine if they're older. So I told her to go home, talk to her husband, and sent some pictures and said, you need to look at, what do you want? Do you want the camping, the basketball, the fishing, or do you want the diapers and the infants? And they bit. So it was amazing. They were with us for 1.5 years, and then they were adopted by a family in Colorado. So within 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, I think, of grandpa and grandma. Amazing, right? God ordained that. Yeah. And back where they were originally from Colorado. So it was amazing of what they've done. And the great thing is, I still have a picture. The oldest one graduated this year from high school, and we got a graduation invitation. And as the boys had just, several years ago when the boys had transitioned, I wasn't able to go. I think I was working, but my husband took some of our kids down to Colorado, watched a basketball game for one of the boys, and then afterward they went out to eat. And adoptive parents, biological grandparent, other biological grandparent, bio uncle, adoptive grandparent, I believe, and then my husband and some of our kids were there. And there's a picture we have of the boys in the middle, surrounded by all this family. And what an amazing story of what family looks like. It's chosen, it's made, it's formed together in some ways that a lot of people just would never even think about forming together.
Oh, that's beautiful. You even said that some the people gave gifts to them, age appropriate toys and whatnot.
Right. So what our church had done when they were transitioning to their adoptive family is we threw a party for them, kind of a goodbye, so excited for you transition party, if you will. So we had it at the church, and we had brought food, and the church, we invited them to bless this family with the gifts, and prayed over them, and sent them off. And I had gotten a text from the mom the next day saying the transition the next morning helped a little bit of it, kind of removed a little bit of the awkward when our boys could open the gifts from the church. And it hopefully helped them out too, a little bit of going from, again, you go to this instant family where you are just being thrown in, and you don't have the toys, you don't have a lot of those types of things. So the church was able to do that, and again, show what love they have.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. I assume, and I'm sure not all foster kids are going to click so much with every foster parent, but for you to be able to see them find this new family, this other family, it's so cool. It is a God thing. It is a God, God's hand in their story, in their path, and it's beautiful. So what was the next placement?
So the next placement We had taken a break for a while, and we worked on renovating a kitchen, and thank goodness we didn't have to worry about having extra kids at that time. So we had Mayana and Lincoln, and we had Sunny and Jeff in our home, and they were then transitioning as well from having 6 total to back down to 4. And what does that look like? That there is loss that comes when other family members, temporary, even if it's temporary brothers moving out. And we took a break, and then this is a really, the stories just get more amazing. Can I say that? As I have seen again the hand of God on this. We had a family in our church that were fostering 2 boys, and we were asked to take the 2 boys on an emergency placement. It wasn't on a Sunday though, and have them for a week. And then they ended up just staying. So that.
Thanks for joining me today as we have visited with Ann and heard about this incredible family, how it got its start, and we're kind of about halfway through here. So next time she's going to be sharing about the rest of those kids and some of their parenting philosophy and some of that kind of stuff. So I hope that you'll join me next time. And thanks again. Thanks for watching today's episode of Light in the Shadow. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can watch future videos. God bless.